organisations to prevent harm and abuse of children. And this includes working with parents to help them to be the best parents they can be so their children can be safe and that they can grow up and be able to thrive in an incredible and unpredictable world. So the first thing I want you to do is I want you to comment in the live comments. I want you to comment and tell us what state you're from. Where are you watching this from? What country are you from? And also how many children you actually have. So state or country, and also how many children. That will be absolutely fantastic. Now, the reality is that it's alive, right? So I can't see you. You can see me. I can't see you. And it's actually pretty hard at times to engage and make sure that people are engaged in this discussion, even though it is a really important topic today. So what we want you to do is we want you to use emojis as a way of connecting in content. So what that means is that if you feel sad when you hear something, we want you to put a sad emoji. If you feel happy, put a happy emoji, etc., etc., etc. If you feel confused, put that one or something like that. There is opportunity to be able to do that. So I want to encourage you to do that as well. The other thing is that we at Child Safe Australia have created a Facebook group specifically for parents called Child Safe Australia for Parents, and we want to invite you to come along to that, and we'll admit you into that group as we share incredible content around how to be the best parent that you can be, and also from experts and other industry leaders to help us in this space. The other thing is that we have a website. You just have to go to childsafe.org.au/live, and there's a bunch of other content there that is really, really great for parents, but also for information around when the next live is, etc. Now, I want to let you know as well that there is opportunity. We get asked this all the time as people are so generous. We get asked all the time, is there a way that we can give to your organisation to keep you sustainable? We know that COVID has hit you hard as well. Is there a way that we can support you? And so on that page, childsafe.org.au/live, you can actually donate. And, you know, $10 doesn't seem like much, but that can actually make a big difference for us. So we can continue to run these lives, which do cost money to do, but so we can get the right experts in, and we can actually do the best we can for you. So we want to invite you to donate today. It's end of tax time as well. So if you would like to do that, we would love to have you. Now, we are just about to welcome our special guest, and I just want to take this opportunity to say a wonderful thank you so much for taking the time to tune in today. We know that it's been a crazy time in COVID, a really tough time, and if you're in Victoria, you know that there's lockdowns even more, and the reality is that it can be tough as parents. I know that I've struggled at times with getting to make sure that I'm parenting effective and really, really well for my children in this time, and giving them the space and time to navigate and to have the right conversation. We're actually really looking forward to sharing with you today, and thanks so much for caring enough to make sure that you are here to talk about this topic. So, without further ado, I would like to introduce Melinda Tankard Reist, who is an incredible person. She is an author, a speaker, and a massive advocate for young people. And I would like to welcome her on the screen right now.
Hi, Neil. Thanks so much for the opportunity to talk to your audience here today.
No worries. Thanks so much, Melinda. Thanks for taking the time and giving your time free of charge to be able to allow us to talk about a topic that is incredibly difficult. Now, before we go any further, we need to let people know that we want people to like, to share, and to tag their friends in this, and they can go into the draw to win an amazing book. What's that book, Melinda?
Well, there's actually two books today, Neil. I have two resources to help parents. One is how to talk to your kids about porn, which is the most easy to read, accessible book I have found on helping parents to have what is a very difficult conversation, a conversation we would really rather not have. And I'm also throwing in good pictures, bad pictures, which is actually written to help your child. So the parent or the caregiver reads this book with their child, very practical strategies, what to do if you see something bad. It keeps the lines of communication open. It takes an approach which isn't shame-based. It takes an approach that really confronts reality. Your child will see porn whether you want them to or not. So they're the two books on offer today.
Fantastic. So to get that, if you just joined us, make sure you like, you share, and you tag this particular live post, and you can go into the draw to win those incredible books. We want you to encourage you, those that have just joined us, make sure you use emojis to show emotion. So if you're happy, put your happy emoji. If you're not, then maybe it's a sad emoji. But let's just try it right now. Let's give the clapping emoji for Melinda as she comes. Awesome. Let's do it. Fantastic. Excellent. All right, so let's kick this off. We have a Q&A straight after this, and people can start to put their questions in the comments and feed them in. And our wonderful people from PN Digital, Rodney and Joe, will be supporting us in the back end and feeding me questions after this presentation. So here's the major thing that I did want to say first before we kick off these questions. It is 10 years of Collective Shout, which is your organisation that you run, that helps helps shut down, hopefully, and make a big noise to make sure that places who are displaying pornography don't impact children and maybe even be taken down. Can you tell us just quickly what this means to you, 10 years in this space?
Well, we're just so happy to be at this place of 10 years of campaigning and activism against sexualization of children, objectification of women, calling out what we call porn culture at every level of society. It really started out as an idea. My third book, Getting Real, Challenging the Sexualization of Girls, had just come out. And people were asking, well, what can we do about this? We know what the research says. We know that sexualizing children is harmful to their well-being, their physical health, their mental health, their emotional health. They were looking for a grassroots movement that they could join. And so I thought, why not? Let's start something, Collective Shout, and got some friends together. It was a crazy idea, but somehow it has been successful. And we've seen multiple victories against advertisers, marketers, corporations who engage in these harmful practices to sell things. So it's a great stage to reach, our 10th anniversary. We would have been having parties all around the country. However, we're going to be rolling out a virtual celebration in about a month's time.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And, I just need to tell you this, that I know you've been advocating massively and trying to shut down Honey Birdette, which is a lingerie shop in places like Eastland and other shopping centres. And every time I walk past that shop with my son and my daughter, they say things like, oh, that model, you can see her breasts, and I'm like, I know, it's terrible, isn't it? And they're like, yeah, why do we have to see that? We don't understand why we have to see that. And I think for me, as a dad, as a parent, I think you are doing such an incredible job because we live in such a sexualized world. And I want to talk to you as we start this first question is, what is the average age of a person who actually sees pornography the first time? Mm-hmm. And why are pornographic sites and advertising aiming at this age?
It's deeply disturbing to acknowledge that even very young children are seeing pornified portrayals of women at every level of society. It's the wallpaper of their lives. In terms of what they're seeing online. The average age has come down to about 9 or 10 now, and certainly 100% of boys have been exposed to porn by the age of 15. But the age level is definitely becoming lower, and that's why we are forced to have this conversation, tragically.
Is it actually that because, you know, boys' bodies and women's body and girls' bodies are changing and their mindsets are changing and hormones are racing and all those sort of things, that these advertisers and also the pornographic industry, is it because they know that and so therefore that's why they're targeting it, or is there some other sinister reason?
Well, certainly the facts about puberty and development have always been there. What the porn industry has been able to do is harness the internet to be able to reach new markets, to drop porn into the Facebook feeds of young boys, for example, to create entire genres of porn based on children's most popular cartoon characters. So that's an industry that wants to grow, that wants to expand, that is reaching a whole new market, and grooming and socializing boys to be taught by the porn industry about women, about girls, about what women and girls exist for. So this is about expanding a multi-billion-dollar industry and deliberately targeting young people as new consumers to grow the industry.
You know,
it's very deliberate.
Yeah, and it sounds deliberate, and that's what really, you know, breaks my heart. You know, I know that that from a really young age, it really is the developmental side. You know, that young age, under that 12 years old, is that real developmental side. We know the brain doesn't develop fully for between 22 and 25. And so you're imprinting these messages.
Correct.
A really important question that I have for you, and I think everyone is asking this, is what are the impacts of a child seeing pornography, and how does it rewire the brain?
So, as you say, they are being exposed to porn at a critical time in their sexual development. What we are seeing is a never-before-seen assault on the healthy sexual development of our children. Their sexual templates are still under construction, and we have allowed the warping and the distorting of that developing sexual template. What all of the research shows is that this is giving children a distorted idea about bodies, relationships, and sexuality. You are injuring their brains, hyperactivating the appetite system, hyperactivating what might have been a normal normal response to things. You're hypercharging that. And so even young boys now are being aroused by depictions of extreme brutality, sadism, violence, rape porn, incest porn, and they think this is normal. They think women want to be abused, women want to be treated violently. A young boy asked in a report last year, do I have to strangle my girlfriend when I have sex with her? And now, I'm sorry, this may be very confronting to your listeners today, but the fact is we have a film that's now #1 on Netflix called 365 Days, and children are watching this. They're reviewing it. They're seeing extracts of that film on TikTok. How do I know that? I watched them this morning. They are being introduced to pornographic themes of extreme violence and subordination and domination of women through TikTok. A lot of parents wouldn't know that. So what we're seeing is boys especially thinking that this is what sexuality looks like. This is how you treat women. We're desensitizing them, and girls think this is normal. This is how I should be treated. I should enjoy this. And if I don't, there's something wrong with me. It's normalizing aggression. It endorses rape myths that no really means yes, that girls want to be violated and assaulted. And the stories that I'm hearing from young people in schools all over the country, which I was hearing pre-COVID, are evidence that a sexist culture grooms sexist boys, and it's primarily girls that are bearing the brunt of porn conditioned boys.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm hoping that there would be a lot of crying eye emojis right now, because
I don't think you're going to get very many happy ones, Neil, to be honest with you.
That's right. And I think the thing is, or angry even, because the reality is that it just, I just,
we need to be angry. We actually should be more angry. This is an experiment we've never done before. We're seeing rising rates of child-on-child sexual abuse and sexual assault, including in schools, at rates never before seen. We have children being groomed and preyed on, even on Instagram. That's another campaign we've got running at the moment. All the places kids like to be, predators and pornographers and the sex industry is right there. And the stories are getting more distressing, more heartbreaking every day. We should be angry. That's actually a just response.
So would you mind unpacking that a little bit? Because, I want to know what trends that are you seeing amongst teenagers in school and pornography?
Well, I wrote a piece for the ABC called Growing Up in Pornland, Why Girls Have Had It with Porn-Conditioned Boys. And in that piece, I documented what young women were telling me around the country. For example, a girl in year 7 said, if a boy wants to hit me, tie me up and stalk me, does that mean he really loves me? I have young girls asking, how do I say no without hurting his feelings? They are being disempowered in a porn culture. They have been turned into porn fantasy props for boys. Girls tell me of daily sexual intrusion, sexual harassment, groping. They tell me about having their bodies compared to the bodies of porn stars. Younger and younger girls are being pressured to send naked pictures, sexualized selfies, and of course they lose control of these images. They end up online. They can't get them back. Terrible pressures there. They described being constantly hassled for sexual favors, even at school. I used to present just to upper secondary. Then I got asked to do middle secondary. Then I got asked to do 7 and 8s. I'm now being asked to address grades 4, 5s, and 6s in primary school because of inappropriate sexual behaviors. Because boys are being exposed to porn, they're acting out on girls, and they think this is normal. Look what we've done to them. What hope will they have of forming intimate, respect-based relationships in future, of being in a, long-term partnerships, of sustaining a family life? This has ripple-on effects in every area of their lives, and the adults have allowed this to happen. Our governments have failed us. Our regulatory bodies have failed us. Even when we say, surely we can find common ground here and agree that little kids shouldn't be seeing rape and torture and incest porn, we're told that is some just terrible violation of so-called, freedom of speech and civil liberties. Well, surely we should recognize what the global research says here about the harms to our children.
Yeah, I mean, I have actually heard that in a particular topic, as a particular country, that they're trying to legalize pedophilia, and as a organisation, a harm prevention charity, that is horrifying. That somehow they think that that's actually something that's okay. I wanted to I wanted to share something with you that I was speaking with a parent, and they actually shared to me that, you know, they were sharing me about another family that their child, they were going out to dinner, and the child said, no, I'm not feeling well. I just want to stay home. And what they actually found was that he stayed home because he wanted to look at pornography. So he actually wanted to avoid the family dinner, not because of dad jokes, but actually because he wanted to stay home and look at pornography. That is a problem.
So what we're seeing is more young people becoming compulsive consumers. And I've interviewed young men about this, and they'll say things like, I realized that I was lying to my family. I realized that I would make excuses not to join them for dinner, not to have a family outing, because it would take me away from the screen. It would take me away from porn. They cut themselves off from friends. They stopped playing sport. They stopped engaging in life-affirming activities that would have in the past given them joy and meaning and helped them to flourish as young people. So what we're seeing is the sexual stunting of a generation, compulsive habits which make them more lonely, more disconnected from family, from community. I've had young men tell me that they don't even respond to real girls now. They'll say to me, we are aroused by the mere sight of a screen. You know, this inanimate plastic object arouses them, but not real touch, real connection. You know, they're losing the ability to read body language, to read face-to-face contact, because they're so aroused by screens, and that's what interests them. It's an absolute tragedy, the destruction of boys' lives, the destruction of their ability to have healthy friendships, let alone, you know, intimate relationships, because it steals them away from meaningful activities, which would act as protection against depression and anxiety. You know, all the mental health problems besieging our young people, including our young men. So that story that you've told, I hear this, you know, all the time.
So I don't know if you've been seeing this over in New Zealand, but they have been they've been showing some pretty incredible videos. Actually, I found out that they're actually using porn stars in them. But have you seen those videos where they come to the door and say, "Oh, hi, Rodney, I'm this," or whatever it is, you know?
In fact, if your viewers today were to check out our Collective Shout website, hopefully later today, when I do the final edit, we have done an analysis of those videos, and we like we like the aim, we like the intention, we like the fact that the New Zealand government is really taking solid steps to educate about the harms of porn. We do have a few problems with a couple of them, and you mentioned there that the porn stars, the actors there they look very happy, and the woman looks, you know, just the glowing and the epitome of robust good health, which isn't really, you know, reality. And also the onus is all on the parents, not the industry that is destroying our children. The onus is always on the parents. And I noticed there was only a mother in the one about porn and the one about online predators. Hello, where's Dad? Why isn't there a father in this picture? Why is it up to mum to have those difficult conversations? So we've welcomed those that campaign, but we have a few reservations.
Yeah. Well, you've mentioned parents. It's their responsibility. We're going to get to this really important question now, and that is, how do parents broach the subject and talking about pornography with their children, and why do some parents avoid it?
Okay. So first thing I want to say about parents is this is not a fair fight. You know, parents are up against a multi-billion-dollar industry which is preying on our children. So I just want to sort of preface what I'm about to say. with it takes a village to raise a child, and
Yes.
there's too much responsibility being put on parents. It's too hard for us. I have 4 kids. I see how difficult this is, where parents are exhausted trying to manage kids' behavior online, exhausted trying to understand the technology. Of course, our kids are running rings around us. So I'm not here to sort of beat up on parents. There's enough of that going on. We carry enough guilt already.
That's right. Yeah, that's not what we're here for.
How inadequate we are. So I just want to say that. Now, having said that, we have no choice but to have this conversation with our children, because if we're not having that conversation, someone else is.
Yeah.
And this is an industry that does not care at all about our children, not one bit. It's quite happy not only to drop porn into their feeds, it's also happy to make porn out of the bodies of children, and we've exposed this with our global campaign against Pornhub. We've got over 1 million signatures now on a petition as part of a global campaign calling out Pornhub. So we have to have the conversation. And the first thing is that we need to show our children that they can trust us with sensitive and difficult subjects, that we love them and care for them enough to have this conversation, that they can come to us if they're being pressured, if they've seen something inappropriate online. They can trust us. We can talk to them about what healthy sexuality should look like, what consent should look like, what intimate relationships. We can certainly model that at home, because it's not always as parents what we say, is it? It's what we do. We can help them to understand that they will see inappropriate content. Now, it may not be in the family home. It might be on a kid's phone at school. It might be on the school bus on the way home from school. I'm being told that kids are gathering at school at recess and lunchtime, and they are watching this film I mentioned, 365 Days, at school. So it's not always what happens at home, is it?
No.
We have to have the conversation. We need to explain to them that there are things that are inappropriate that they will see. If they see it, they need to tell mum or dad or a trusted adult straight away. If it's happened at school, that becomes a duty of care issue for the school, and the school needs to be told about this, and the school needs to take action as well. If you notice that your child is enjoying in family activities, that they seem to be secretive, it feels like they might be keeping something from you, that's often a warning sign. Changes in sleep patterns, changes in eating, those kind of things can be warning signs. Of course, have
data usage.
Right, the data use. Check that they may have a second phone. A lot of kids tell me, mum makes his hand in our phone at night, but they've got a second phone, or they've got another SIM card. Like they're clever little buggers, let's face it.
Sneaky. Sneaky, yeah.
Give them an A+. That's a really bad joke. But, they need to know that the harms to them, the risks to them of what they will be exposed to online. Now, what to do if your child's seen porn, which will happen. Try to stay calm, take a deep breath, try not to panic. If you have a massive meltdown, a massive breakdown in front of the kid, they're not going to tell you the second time. No. So we have to somehow try to stay calm and then talk it through, find out where they saw it, so that you can try to protect them from seeing it again. If you don't have internet filtering software yet, I can recommend Family Zone, which all my IT friends tell me is the best one out there. Yeah. If you believe the use has become compulsive, the child may need psychological help. I've talked to parents who say that their child was exposed to porn by an older child, and those children are now medicated. They suffer insomnia and nightmares. When it gets to that stage, obviously there needs to be some kind of a professional intervention. There's a lot of good resources now. eSafety Commission has resources available to help. Those books that I mentioned, Collective Shout, we have resources on our pages as well to help you have this difficult conversation.
Yeah, and, the thing is, what I did with my children is, a couple of them at that age where we're talking about sex, and the different body parts and those sort of things. And one thing that I did is I actually coupled the sex talk with pornography, and so we talked about respecting women and etc. And I found that they received that rather than better in that space because it was connected to the larger conversation rather than sitting down and go, hey, let's talk about porn. Like, I think that's the wrong approach. And I think actually what you said is capitalizing on the moments. So, for instance, if you do walk past Honey Burdette, you might turn to them and say, do you think that's okay? And they say, oh, yeah, I see that stuff. What? You see that stuff? Let's have a conversation, sit down and have a hot chocolate together and have a conversation.
That's
I think what age,
moments.
Yeah, what age do you think it will be wise for parents to have that conversation with them?
Yeah, I often get asked this question, and I wish I could say an older age than it needs to be. Now, obviously, with younger children, you start in a way that you teach them to use proper names for body parts, because if something happens to them, they can describe it. You teach them about what's appropriate touch and what isn't. You teach them that their body is theirs, and they're allowed to say, no, I don't want to hug Uncle whoever, or I don't want to wrestle with cousin whoever. You help them to know that they don't have to do something that they don't want to do. So you introduce the conversation in an age-appropriate way. Sadly, we are having to talk to children in grades 5s and 6s about sexting because it's happening that young. It's hard to believe, isn't it?
It's hard to believe, yeah.
We have discovered on Instagram 9-year-olds being preyed on by predators. We've exposed the accounts of hundreds of predators that are targeting underage girls online. And during live chats, a girl is doing a live chat. Anyone can join that chat, and she doesn't know who that person is until she's on the chat. And we have found men literally live masturbating to underage girls on Instagram. Now, I'm saying this because a lot of parents think that Instagram is relatively harmless, that it's just a whole bunch of photo sharing. There's much more to it than that. And that's just the horrible reality there. So age appropriate, but sooner than later, if you want to protect your child from inevitable exposure. I have parents telling me my child just searched an innocent search term into a search engine and porn pictures came up. They might be looking at something in Google Images, an innocent term, a favorite animal, doesn't matter what it is. There's nothing that the porn industry won't turn into porn. So there's really no safe space online. And if you have given your child an internet-able device, you've given them a hand grenade that will blow up. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. That sounds dramatic, but, I've been doing this work for a while now. And it's not going to go well. It's really not going to go well. Even just yesterday, I had a parent contact me discovering that their 13-year-old had been threatened and bribed to send images. And, the horrible discovery for the parent to know this. And these are the stories that I am told frequently. So, have the conversation, and you have to start young, tragically.
I have heard of people who are my age and younger, and they became addicted to pornography because they wanted to know about sex, and their parents wouldn't talk to them about it because they thought that it was dirty to talk about. It was a taboo subject. And so where do you find out about sex? You go and search for it. And through that process, they became addicted to pornography. Now, these are young women. These are young adult women who you would have thought that maybe there's an opportunity to be able to understand that. But the truth is that what I hear you saying is, as parents, and we need to let them know this, is please don't avoid this subject.
Correct. Young people are looking to porn as a sex education handbook, but it is a poor sex educator. It gives a hollow understanding of true intimacy, of real sensuality, of connection, and dare I say, love. Right?
Yeah.
They're not going to learn about love from pornography. It's not possible. The most popular genres of porn are the most violent, right? They're going to learn about violence, and they're just being set up for failure. You know, reviewing all my notes again for our talk today, Neil, it's just made me even angrier than I often am. But, you know, we've got to recognize what we are doing to our young people, to their lives. You know, it's absolutely criminal what we've allowed to happen. And that's why we do have to help them to understand that there's a completely different version of sexuality, which is healthy, which is positive, which is wonderful, you know, that they're not going to get online through the global porn industry.
Yeah, that's right. So there's been we're going to take questions in just one moment, but there has been one that does connect in that how do we actually speak to kids that are younger than grade 5? So younger than grade 5, I'm thinking that you're going to say that it's actually about body safety and talking about the right names for your body parts, but also respectful relationships and those sort of things. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. Yes, what I'd said earlier, what's good touch, what's not, safe touch, open communications, not making them do things that they don't want to do in terms of expressing affection to someone or allowing someone else to express affection to them if they don't want that. Being very careful about screens, what older children might be introducing to them, what they may be seeing at school. Find out what your school's policy is around devices. Some schools, fortunately, have banned devices from school, not just because of the risks, the things we've already talked about, because the kids can't focus. They can't concentrate. They can't learn anything. They can't read a book because they're so hyper stimulated by the flashing lights and all the images and the scrolling that's, you know, hitting them in the head, and they can't learn. They can't do serious learning. So again, find out what your school policy is, and if they don't have one, make sure they get one, or think about another school. Yeah,
absolutely. Well, the last question for, I guess, the pre-planned ones that we chatted about is, what does a parent do if they have a child who is addicted to pornography, and how can you tell? You said a couple of things, but I think there's a little bit more that can be unpacked. And then we'll get to our Q&A. And I just want to say a massive thank you to all those that are sharing their stories, their comments, and their frustrations through the live feed, both on YouTube and on Facebook. And we really appreciate that. And thank you for being so vulnerable and real with a tough topic. So over to you.
So again, remaining calm when you find out, because it is a shock for any parent to discover this. It really is a shock.
Yeah, it is.
Trying not to panic. Now, if the use has become compulsive, this is very, very serious and will likely need professional help. Now, young men that I've spoken to who have been able to stop consuming porn told me that they had to take radical action. Wow. They limit how much time they're on the computer. Some actually get rid of their computer or their devices altogether, or they hand it to third parties and only take it back like if they really need to do an assignment or something like that. The child may need professional help from someone who actually knows what they're doing, because unfortunately there are, this is anecdotally what I'm told, to many people in the so-called counselling professions who think that porn can be helpful, that it can be good, that it can be used to educate about sexuality. That's certainly not my position after more than a decade of research and writing a book on the subject. So look, it needs professional intervention. Ask around, get recommendations for the right person to help your child through this, because it won't be a simple way back. It's not a simple way back. It'll need a lot of help and a lot of intervention and a lot of family support, and some pretty strict boundaries as well. to try to get your child back on track to have a good life, because porn isn't going to give them a good life.
No, and that's the thing, is that we talked about rewiring the brain, but actually even further than that, you're not just rewiring the brain, you're setting them up for failure of relationships. Pornography sets them up for failure of relationships, failure of friendships, failure of work. People missing work to look at pornography, etc., etc. And they won't be able to. And they won't be able to get aroused. They won't be able to get aroused naturally when a woman or a man enters. It's totally. And the truth is that you're right. It is incredibly tough for people to get off of the addiction. We're going to take questions now, and while that's happening and we're getting them fed through to us, we wanted to also say, don't forget to like and share and comment and tag your friends so that you can win these books for you. And that would be really, really good. So our first question.
You can always order them from my website. There's a special on there at the moment. So
fantastic. You won't miss out if you do that. But we do want you to like, because we want to get this as far as we can. We had so many people register. There's so many people online. We just want to get this as wide as we can, because it's so important. So the first question today is, are there any common, I can't read that, to porn addiction? Are there any common traits to porn addicted children?
So making excuses for not being with the family. They cease engagement in their usual activities. They might not want to play sport anymore. They may not want to go out and hang out with their friends. Their school grades may start to suffer. Their sleep may be interrupted. They may lose their appetite. You're really looking for secrecy, excuses, just wanting to be in their room the whole time with the door closed. A sudden, say the parent suddenly enters a room and there's a sudden closing of the laptop lid, or a sudden jerking away, hiding the phone, putting the phone somewhere else, trying to keep the screen away from the parent. Those kind of signs are what you should look for, and then try to introduce the conversation. They may not be very happy about that. They may not be happy that their habit has been discovered, but you have to intervene, because the child will end up in a worse place. And I've done a lot of interviews with individuals who have been porn consumers, and they've said they never expected to end up in the kind of places they ended up in, consuming illegal content, often child sexual exploitation material and other content of that nature, not expecting that's where they'd end up. But because they become desensitized to what they started out with, they end up needing more harder content. Something else that's worked a little bit with boys that I've spoken to, young men that I've spoken to, is that I'll say to them, you have no idea of the truth of the woman's life whose body you are consuming. And from research, we know that many women who end up in the sex industry are women who have come from marginalized backgrounds, perhaps child abuse growing up, and some may have been trafficked. And we have exposed this with Pornhub, that videos have been created from women who have been trafficked into that industry. And so I've said to men, if you're consuming porn, you've become a patron of a global industry which trades in the bodies of women. Like, is that really do you want to be that person? And I've had boys say to me that when they heard that, they still had enough of an ethical center, a conscience, to realize, I don't want to be a patron of that global industry. No. And it's helped them not just to think of how it's hurting them, but how they're contributing to a global harm, a global human rights violations. I don't even remember what the question was, but it was very good. Thank you.
No, no.
Probably getting a bit carried away here.
No, that's fine. I love that you're passionate about this topic, and you should be. You should be as a parent, but also as a human. We should all be raising the child, as a community.
Well, we just can't afford to leave the sexual formation of our children in the hands of this unethical global sex industry. We just cannot allow that to happen.
That's right. So have you done any research around any common conditions like ADHD or anxiety or anything that sort of has spawned from addiction to pornography?
Certainly mental health certainly impacts on sleep, depression, alcohol consumption. Often these things are, interconnected. Low self-esteem, self-hatred, feeling that you can't get free of this. Like some studies I've looked at, some young men are consuming porn every spare hour they have. Some are even using it in the workplace and barely doing any work.
Yeah.
We're talking like hours and hours a day for years, years and years and years. So again, you're not going to flourish as a human being when you're engaging like that. One young man said to me, it changed the way that he viewed women. He said previously he could be friends with women, he could have good relationships, he enjoyed the company of women. But he said when he became a compulsive porn user, he said every woman he started to see only in sexual terms. He said, I would undress them in my mind. Yeah. And he resented that idea. He resented those thoughts, but couldn't get free of them, and realized that he'd started to see every female as an object for his pleasure and gratification, rather than as a whole person of dignity and worth and worthy of respect. Yeah.
Well, one last question I want to ask you is that's come through is, what does
erectile dysfunction, if I could just sort of throw that in there.
Yes, absolutely.
Rates of erectile dysfunction in teenage boys. This has not happened in history.
No.
And we need to appeal to boys, as for a selfish reason, as well as the ethical reasons of, becoming a patron of a global industry. You start telling them the research about not being able to get an erection, and that can sometimes cause them to consider it in a whole new way. But yeah, teenage boys are being treated for erectile dysfunction problems, which in the past was a disease of old age.
Yeah, and also, obviously, we don't need to go into this, but we know that GPs are now seeing injuries from sex acts from young children, as in, 10, 11, 12, 13-year-olds who are watching porn and acting it out with their partner, and are even causing life-altering body problems within GP. So the last question I want to ask before we kind of wrap it up is obviously right now we have mums and dads listening, and I hope there's no kids, and I'm sure there's not, but mums and dads are listening. The reality is that whilst we want the family unit to be united in this subject, truth is that there might be some people listening right now or will listen later that are a mum or a dad, and they actually have different views. For instance, the husband might have different views, or the partner might have different views, and says, there's nothing wrong with it, and does it himself, and etc. And the wife, and vice versa. We know that that's the same. Yes. What do they do in that situation in trying to teach their children what is right?
I think this is one of the hardest questions that I'm asked at parent events around the country, because if the parents are not united, it's an extreme and unjust responsibility for, and I'm going to say the mother because it's usually the mother. Now, I've spoken to mothers whose partners consume porn at home and sometimes in front of the children. Now, to me, that's get out of there, run for your life, or get him to leave, preferably, because why do the woman and children have to leave?
That's right. Yeah,
that's an act of child abuse right there. Like, it's actually crime to expose children to. So let's name it That's actually child abuse, and you have every right to protect your child from child abuse. If the father is justifying his own porn consumption, if he is introducing porn to boys, which is tragically not an uncommon thing, anecdotally from what I hear, you have a right to protect yourself and your children from the harms of pornography in the home. And if he isn't willing to consider the research, consider his own children, if he's putting his own porn consumption before the well-being of the family unit, he doesn't deserve to have the family. Because he obviously doesn't care enough for his own children and his own partner to actually do something about that. Look, I don't have an easy answer on this one. I do find this one very difficult and very complex. But I've spoken to women who for years tried to keep the family unit together. But the other parent is not willing to change, to make concessions, to accept that pornography is dangerous and harmful and toxic for all the reasons I've already described. Then there needs to be some serious response. And I'd like to think that the aggrieved partner and the children would have a community around her that could help her to exit that situation.
Yeah.
I've got folders of stories like this, collections of accounts, and some women have tried to make it work and others have decided we can't do this. This is part of the continuum of domestic violence, which we need to acknowledge that porn is also a tool of violence, a tool of domestic violence, of violence against women and children. And we need to acknowledge that.
Absolutely. And that's a really good end note for us in terms of our interview and our question time, because you're right. The truth is there is nothing good that can come from pornography. There is nothing good that can come from pornography, but there is everything good that can come from a discussion about pornography.
That's right.
And that's what we want to leave with you guys as parents. That this is such an important topic, and that's why at Child Safe Australia we're not afraid to broach tough topics, because we want to help you as parents to be the best parents that you can be, and because the team at Child Safe are parents as well, and we know how important this is, and we know that these discussions are not being had because the pornographic industry is thriving. It is one of the largest money-making industries in the world, alongside child sex trafficking and arms dealerships. So that is really, really important to understand. Melinda, there is so much thanks for you coming in. There is massive amounts of thanks, and especially for having you on and people sharing their stories. What you're doing is you're giving people the place and the platform to be able to just be able to share where they're at. And I think that's what you're doing well. I want to commend you on your 10 years with Collective Shout.
Thank you.
There have been other questions have come to us. So can I ask, Melinda, if you can, after this, go through on the Child Safe Australia page and answer those questions yourself?
Yes, I can do that. Or if you like, you can contact us as well through collectiveshout.org. And we're happy to have an ongoing conversation on this subject. And thank you, Neil, for making this possible. Not everyone wants to go to these difficult and dark places, but if we care about our kids, we have no choice but to have this conversation. So thanks to you and your team for making it happen.
That's no worries. Well, we'll say goodbye to you, and I'm just going to wrap this up now. So thank you so much, Melinda, and we really appreciate you and everything you stand for.
Thank you so much again, and thanks to everyone who took part today.
No worries. Thanks. So I hope you were encouraged by that discussion, and also, I guess, impacted incredibly hard. And we'd love to hear from you about how this has impacted you. As we said, if you go into the draw, you can go into the draw to win those two books, How to Talk to Your Children About Pornography, and the other one around images. What's really important is is you go to childsafe.org.au/live and you can find out more information. Also have the link to, this will be available on our YouTube channel, but also on the Facebook, Child Safe Australia Facebook page. But just go to the Child Safe Live one, you'll be able to get to it. The other thing I wanted to let you know is, as I said at the start, that Child Safe Australia -for parents, so it's a specific Facebook page for parents that we've got, and we're going to put up different information, different opportunities, different ways in which you can connect. So please come and be part of that group. The other thing is as I said at the start, that these conversations are happening every month, and next month on July 22nd, at 3:30, we've got Dr. Jodie Richardson. She's going to be talking about how to parent anxious kids, not how to parent kids with anxiety, but how to parent anxious kids. And in this time of COVID, it has been an incredibly crazy time. The other thing is that the replay of this will also be available, and all of ours is available on our Child Safe Australia Facebook page. I want to thank you so much for being here. If you want to see these happen more regularly, we want to invite you to go onto this website, childsafe.org.au/live, and you can even make a donation, which a lot of people ask they can do. So I hope you have a wonderful evening. Thanks for talking about this with us, and we look forward to seeing you next month. Take care.